Hello, my name is Joshua Radecki, and welcome to my presentation, Polykletos and Lysippus, Achieving Proportional Harmony Through Math and Ancient Sculptures. And today we will be discussing how the Greeks' fascination with the human body and their fascination with mathematics tie into each other and are very codependent on one another, and how this inspired artists such as Polykletos and Lysippus to use mathematics to create proportional harmony in their sculptures. And this technique of math in art has lived on for thousands of years and is still seen in some of the most prolific artists of all time's work. A brief overview of Polykletos. Polykletos was a Greek sculptor in the 5th century BCE. He's considered one of the most important sculptors of the classical antiquity period, and he is recognized for the beautiful and realistic proportions within his sculptures. He is known for the Canon of Polykletos, and as you see here on the screen, this is one of his most famous works, the Spear Bearer. And when discussing Polykletos, discussing the Canon and the Spear Bearer are some of the two most important things to discuss when discussing him. And we will get into that shortly. Now, a brief overview of Lysippus. He was a Greek sculptor active in the 4th century BCE. He is considered one of the greatest sculptors of the classical period, and there is some debate whether he was self-taught or he studied the canon of Polykletos. And there's another side of scholars that debate that he was actually a part of the school of Polykletos. So no matter which way you look at it, it is clear that he gained much inspiration from Polykletos. And from there, he created his own canon, known as the Canon of Lysippus. Now, the ancient Greeks had a special relationship to mathematics, and it is considered a type of language to them, and a language that modern-day mathematicians can still understand and speak today. And the study of mathematics as a demonstrative discipline began in the 6th century BCE with the Pythagoreans. Now, math was viewed by the Greeks as a supreme truth and beauty. They viewed math as a way to not only understand the world, but to reach absolute truth. And Greek philosopher Aristotle was even quoted as saying that he could conceive of nothing more beautiful than the objects of mathematics. Now, the Greeks had a deep fascination with the human body as well, and these two fascinations tie into one another so perfectly, as the Greeks viewed the human body as beautiful and an embodied perfection, and they wanted their art to reflect their admiration for harmonies and proportions. And Polykletos wanted his art to encapsulate this fascination of Greek culture, as he sought to emulate the ideal proportions and physical aesthetic through his art by using mathematics. And one of his most famous works, known as the Spear Bearer, it's extraordinary as it stands in a contrapostal style, and it is said to represent the Greeks' pursuit of perfect human beauty through mathematical proportions. Now, using math in art is such a valuable tool, as it can help create ideal proportions, making the artwork appear much more realistic, and it can give the art piece a more appealing look to the human eye. And artists have been using mathematics in art for thousands of years, as for example, prolific artists such as Leonardo da Vinci have used math in their art. So this is a inspiration that has sprung and lived on for thousands of years. And using math in art can create such balance in a very realistic movement, in harmonious proportions and symmetry, and such unity. And this can all be articulated using math concepts. And Polykletos is often credited as one of the earliest examples in ancient Greek art by starting this movement within his sculptures, most notably his artwork titled the Spear Bearer. Now, when discussing Polykletos, like I said, it is important to discuss the canon of Polykletos, as he created a rule or canon to achieve proportional harmony. And this system was based on a mathematical formula where the human body was divided into separate measured sections, as you can see here on the right side of the screen. That is a perfect representation of that. And the exact equation that Polykleitos used is unknown because original documents were lost, but some scholars suggest that the canon was influenced by Pythagorean mathematics. So from there, we can draw the conclusion that a type of geometric mathematics were probably used in his work. And the spear bearer is said to be a perfect example of what the Greeks referred to as symmetry, meaning symmetry, and because the proportions of the spear bearer are so perfectly balanced as each body part achieves ideal symmetry. And this contributed to the spear bearer being one of the most sought after sculptures in Greek and Roman culture. And now many scholars have tried to decipher the math used in Polykleitos' art, and from what they've been able to uncover is that Polykleitos used a 1:7 head-to-body ratio in his art, meaning the head of the body can fit inside the body 7 times. And this was very meticulously thought out, and he wanted to use these mathematical formulas to create such a realistic and symmetrical style to his work, as he was even quoted as saying, "A well-made work is the result of numerous calculations carried to within a hair's breadth." Now, when discussing Lysippus, who came after Polykleitos, it is important to discuss the canon of Lysippus and how he achieved symmetria in his work. Now, he developed his own canon, and his style differed from Polykleitos, as he presented a taller sculpture with a smaller head, and this developed a more graceful and elegant style. And he used a 1:8 ratio compared to Polykleitos, meaning that the head of the body can fit inside the body 8 times. So as stated, the head was a lot smaller than Polykleitos, and as stated before, this is different. A norm of bodily proportions is essentially different from that of Polykleitos. So he gained much inspiration from him, but he wanted something new. He wanted a new style. He wanted something different. And Lysippus is often credited with establishing the 8-headed scale of proportions, which is still a method that is used by artists all around the world today. And the scraper, which is right here on the bottom right hand of your screen, is a perfect example of that 1:8 ratio method. And as you can see on the top right of your screen right there, you have the spear bearer by Polykleitos on the left, and on the right you have the scraper by Lysippus. And this is a perfect example of how the head fits in there within their ratios that they created. So you could see the 1:7 ratio method right there by Polykleitos and the 1:8 ratio method by Lysippus. Now, conclusion, the Greeks had a deep fascination of the human body, and this deep fascination of the human body tied in to the Greeks' strong relationship with math. And these two fascinations were very codependent on each other, especially when it came to the art world, as math for them represented supreme truth and beauty, and Polykleitos sought to represent this beauty of the physical form by using math to create perfect proportions. And Lysippus, who gained inspiration from Polykleitos and his canon, created his own new canon, which was a more graceful style, and he used his own ratio to represent perfect proportions. As in using math and art has spawned inspiration that has lived thousands of years, as the 1:8 ratio method by Lysippus is still used today by artists all around the world. And Polykleitos is credited as one of the very first to use mathematics in his work, especially in ancient Greek culture. And that concludes my presentation for today, and I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.